Hey there, everyone. It's Kristi, and welcome to the October Patron Hangout. The first thing you might notice is that it's Matthew and me this month, and the first thing I'd like to do is give a shout out to Tom to say we hope you're feeling better and that we hope you're well enough to join us for the November Hangout whenever that works out for our schedules. So we're thinking of you, Tom, even if you're not here. Matthew, I guess you would concur with that? You already passed on your messages?
Absolutely, yes. I sent a message to Tom earlier, but get well soon, and hopefully you'll be back here soon and help me not look like the idiot I am.
You're not. To never look like an idiot, nor are you one. The next thing before we get going on the stories, well, and a little chat, is you'll notice perhaps that the quality of my sound has improved vastly from almost every other Patreon Hangout, not just Patreon Hangout, but all my Hangouts have in the past, and that's because with the funds that you guys have contributed, my patrons have contributed, I went and bought a new mic, and it's made so much of a difference. So this guy, whenever you enjoy the audio quality from now on, just for those of you who make a contribution, Matthew, Tom, and Xander, other people too, give yourself a pat on the back because you guys made it possible. So thank you guys so much for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So you didn't tell me what you got. What you ended up purchasing?
I have it's a Snowball Blue. And
it's a blue snowball, yeah. That's the same one Steve has.
Oh, really? Oh, nice. It's gorgeous. It's got a massive round top to it with a bright red light that goes on when it's plugged in. So after I used it, I found myself later in the day singing One-Eyed, One-Horned, Flying Purple People Eater. I was like, where the hell did I get that idea from? And then I looked at my mic and went, oh, it's because it kind of looks like a one-eyed, one-horned flying, well, not like a purple people eater, but it does look like it has one eye. But I love it. It's got 3 settings. I've only had to use the one so far, but I'm excited for all of the high quality audio I can record in future.
Okay.
What kind do you have?
Look forward. This is a Shure SM7. It's a broadcast microphone because I do narrations and stuff like that. I needed a good mic for that. This is not a USB mic, so in other words, it does not plug directly into my computer. In fact, when I was messing around earlier, I have a cloud lifter that amplifies the microphone, and then if I can move this thing, it's a Focusrite Scarlett that actually inputs it and then has the output connectors to my speakers and USB connections. So I have a multi-stage setup here. And hopefully now that I moved those cables, I didn't ruin my sound.
No.
But it's a multi-stage setup because this is a professional setup. These are the kind of microphones you see in radio stations. So it's either this mic or the RE20, which is the long silver mic. I chose this one because I'm a Shure fan and I like the way it sounds on my voice. It doesn't require that much EQ.
Yeah, and it's got a nice stand there too. You look super professional.
Oh yeah. One of these days I might be as famous as what's his name? Seth Andrews. Because he uses the exact same mic, but he's smarter than I am. So
well, the thing is, if you recite the words if you look things up in research and you recite what other people have found out, you can sound really smart too. I mean, there is a phenomenon in psychology known as, I think it's called like the host effect or the show host effect, that if you give somebody the answers to questions and have them ask the other person or ask them anything they want to and the other person can't answer, the person asking the questions looks really smart. Like Stephen Fry in QI is an example for those of you who watch. Quite interesting. He always has,
or Alex Trebek at any point in his life.
Precisely. But he only has the cards. He doesn't know that stuff. But he looks really smart.
He's done it for decades now, so he's learned. He's gleaned a little bit of information off of being a game show host for, I don't know, since he was in his 20s, wasn't that? So he's been doing this 40, 50 years now.
But yeah, I think I saw an episode of Jeopardy when I was back in the States. I was like, wow, that's still going on. It's still a thing.
Still a thing, yep.
It's an institution. So how have you been since our last hangout?
Things are improving. I didn't get to mention it on Steve's hangout, which is probably still going on. But I finally got a new door, so my house is secure again. Had to get a new door, new water heater, and so yeah, I've had to pay a lot recently.
Is it fun being a grown-up?
Yes, having to care for the home because even though this is a multi-unit dwelling, I have a mortgage. This is a condo, so everything's my responsibility.
Yep. When I first got my job at 15 and a half or 16, however, I pretty much have been working since it's been legal for me to do it. I could spend my money on albums or new clothes or whatever else. And then you get older and you get a nice bonus. You're like, oh, look, I can fix the roof.
At least I don't
Not
have to worry about the roof. That's the association's job, but everything you see inside is my responsibility here.
right.
Yeah, adulthood, lovely
Mhm.
adulthood.
Yeah. So that's good. I'm glad that you're safe in your home once again.
Hmm.
And I've been very busy in the last month with work and
You
also with YouTube.
you've had some prolific YouTube output.
Yeah, yeah. And that's coming off of like the month of August, which I mostly spent doing a lot of the collaboration videos. That went into September as well. Just had, yeah, like a flurry of activity. And I even have, and I feel so guilty about the videos that I meant to make that I haven't. I've got a list and I'm just like, okay, all the videos that are in my head that I keep thinking I should make, I'm just going to write them down so that when I have free time, I can go to the list and decide what's most important. And without even trying, I put down 10 titles, of things that I've thought I would have made at this point. So yeah, I've got to learn to pace myself a bit better.
And you do real work somewhere along the line in there.
Yeah, my full-time job, yes. Then on top of that, yes, an actual full-time. This is my hobby, yes, but it's been kind of a situation where I come home on an evening and spend 2 to 4 hours editing a video, or doing a hangout, or doing something, and I had one day where I didn't have any YouTube things to do, like hangouts that day, and I didn't have a video to get out like that I promised. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take a day and not do any YouTubing. I'm not going to do anything YouTube related. I made a specific effort to go out with a friend. We went to see the concert by the band Crystal Fighters on Friday night, just to make sure I have enough real time with face to face. What do we joke about? Called it meet time instead of online time. So
You're in meat
yeah,
space. Join us. Join us.
yeah,
I
exactly.
need it.
Come back. But it's been really great. But yes, I wanted, you mentioned that before, and I just wanted you to say it again because I wanted to just kind of have somebody else to talk to about this. Like, oh, my channel's been mad lately. Good, but mad. Yeah.
Well, it's all good stuff. I know one of the more interesting things was because you're getting a lot of flack from anti-feminists. I had noticed that one of the previous Patreon hangouts we had done, you'd used my face as the thumbnail picture on it. And so my face is now in someone's anti-Kristi video now.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
I don't care. It was just like, oh wow, I'm on the coattails of fame here.
Infamy, I think. Oh yes, there's some people love to hate, so but
I,
collateral damage. I'm sorry.
it's as long as those docs me, it's like I don't know.
Yeah.
You and Steve are the only people who know remotely where I live, so I'm not worried.
Yes, no, yes. And that was basically poor researching on their part. If they're going to put a thumbnail of you up on a video about me, they just
Well, it
missed
wasn't
the
a
thing.
thumbnail of me. It was they were showing your channel, and so they were showing they were showing the videos that we had on your channel, and so there was a row of
Oh,
four
right.
videos, and then there was another row of four videos, but the first video in the second row was our
Had
Patreon
yours in
hangout.
it. Got
Yes.
it. Yes. All those really crazy videos I make about like child brides and as evidence of why we still need feminism in the West, or
Hmm.
discussing male domestic abuse. Oh yes, crazy, crazy feminist.
Yeah, and like many arguments that are going on the internet, it just feels like the two groups are talking past each other. There's this whole discussion of definitions and things like this, whereas once you figure out what's in each other's heads, it's like you're asking different things about each other. You want equality of the sexes, but they're applying different words to it, or you want people to be treated the same, or you don't want people hurt, but you're using different words for it, so it makes the conversation ambiguous, and you're fighting over what basically ends up being definitions because people find the F word terrible to say or terrible to be labeled as. So It's
I
weird.
think that one of the best things that came out of the Reasonable Questions collaboration was because it was a response to several people who had made their own questions video. Christiosity's question, especially about reaching out and working on men's issues, it got a lot more exposure on a lot more channels than would have otherwise if she had just done it on her own channel. And as a consequence from that has come the group Against the Odds, which is a collaboration of feminist egalitarians and anti-feminists, self-proclaimed, who want to find common ground on men's issues and do collaboration videos. The first, I think there was somebody who gave his perspective. That's up on the channel, and then Christiosity just posted a bit more about the kind of content that's going to be coming up. And I'll be recording audio in the next 2 days for a collaboration video on men's abuse, especially domestic abuse. So I'm hoping that this is an area where instead of it being that black and white or two sides of the fence, that this collaboration and everybody focusing on things that we agree on. This is the other thing that's important in the group, is that there have been a couple attempts by some individuals to start debates within the forum, and they've been talked to about this isn't really the appropriate place for debates because we want to focus on what we have in common and we don't want to create divisions. And some people have gone, okay, that's fine. And other people are like, well, then I'm out of here. But the whole point of it is to really only focus on those things that we can work on together in a positive way and improve it, understanding and education. And that hopefully will be a small step in a wider direction, or not in a wider direction, but in a more positive direction.
Well, good luck on that. We definitely need that because there's already too many divisions.
Agreed. Because there's a myth that feminists don't care about men's issues, which is a myth. I mean, some feminists probably, there might be some extreme feminists. I don't know, though. I mean, I don't, people say that, people who say this, I've never seen a feminist basically say, I don't care about anything bad that happens to men. I've just never come across that evidence for that. But it is not the case that I don't care about, for instance, like I decided to join the group that's dealing with abuse. That's an issue I care about, and it's a gendered issue. And women, disproportionately experience types of domestic violence, but that doesn't mean that men don't disproportionately experience other kinds of domestic violence. So let's look at the problem of abuse with an understanding of how it's different. And I think the point of the group is to, kind of break down the myth and say to feminists, okay, what issues do you want to talk about in terms of improving men's lives? And to people who are egalitarian or anti-feminist and suspicious, to actually see some work being done in a positive way that isn't taking a sort of MRA Paul Elam stance, which is they talk about men's rights as a way to, or in addition to, criticizing women or disparaging women. It's not there to disparage women, this group. It's about really focusing on the issues. So if it keeps going in that direction, then I would hope that it would go forward.
All right.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that's us catching up and a plug for the group. And while I'm plugging things, before we move on, I also wanted to announce that on November 2nd, my time zone, November 3rd, New Zealand time zone, we're going to be starting a monthly chat on feminist issues, because one of the things that we also find when a lot of people who do feminist content chat is that we get asked the same questions over and over and over. So part of the idea of the show was to address questions that people have about feminism, or the questions that we get asked a lot about it, discuss feminist news, things that have been coming up in the news that could be understood with a feminist critical lens in terms of analyzing it, and some other things too. So yeah, that's going to be coming up on the 2nd of November. So you guys can look for that on my channel. And the final plug, I said one more thing, but then I realized I had one more, is that I'm going to be live streaming on election night with Will Fox. He's coming to Cologne for the morning of the election, our time, and we're going to be live streaming right along with all of the other news channels, looking at the results coming in, having guests on, talking about various elections and their results and their implications for the future. So I guess November isn't really going to get any slower in terms of my output by the sounds of it.
Not at all. And of course, there's going to be a lot to talk about whether or not we're pretty sure which way the election is going to go, but it's almost like one of the candidates is going to make the world burn after after the 8th. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, if Trump can give a concession speech, will be one of the big things we'll be looking for on election night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I heard someone say the most important person in a democracy isn't the first leader, it's the second. And so being able to step back is an important trait in keeping, this type of government going forward. So he needs to be able to do that, step back and let the elected person take charge.
There have been a lot of revolutions and a lot of new governments, and what distinguished the American experiment from a lot of the experiments that failed was that we have been committed in this country since the beginning to a peaceful transition of power and recognizing the legitimacy of the government that has been elected. If you don't have people in the country who believe in the legitimacy of the government, that government will start to lose legitimacy and fall. So we have to really be careful with what we've been handed from, the people who've passed on our democracy. Trump and his followers have to be very careful about what they do to it with their words.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm more worried about the 9th. I think I'm going to just sleep well on the 8th because the 9th is going to probably be the shit show.
I hope you're wrong, but I guess we will see.
We'll see.
It's just over a week away now. Oh, so excited. Okay, it's just, for me, like as a political scientist, especially in this election, which has been in so many ways a natural experiment that we could run. Okay, can I be a little bit of a political scientist before we get onto the stories?
Go right ahead.
All right, so this election is, for me, has been amazing. I know it's been for a lot of Americans agonizing. There have been a lot of negative things that have come up, hurtful things. It's been very difficult emotionally as an election for us as a country. But if you step outside of that, because from kind of detaching and looking at it scientifically, one of the things about this election that is exciting is we have two different campaign philosophies going up head to head. And as political scientists, we're not allowed to tamper with elections in order to change variables to see how they impact the outcome. That's highly unethical. We can't manipulate elections and just to find things out for ourselves as scientists. But when they happen naturally, then we have a great opportunity to see something. And what we're seeing in this race is Clinton and her old school approach of field offices, investing in human resources, knocking on doors, working with data, identifying voters, getting people to the polls. And on the completely opposite end of that, you've got Trump's basically digital campaign. He hasn't invested in field infrastructure. He doesn't have a decent get out the vote structure in place in a lot of places. He's underfunded his campaign in many ways, but he gets a lot of media and he holds massive rallies. So if you put these two campaign styles up against each other, is it the case that, get out the vote efforts are key to winning an election? Or have we moved to a point where a candidate can just get by on digital media and free media through the news and also some, online presence? So watching how well Clinton performs in her turnout and Trump compared to Romney, who ran a more old school get out the vote plan in 2012, is going to be really, really fascinating for me as a political scientist. So that's one of the reasons that I'm really excited about this election. I know I'm also ready for it to be over. I also have the suspicion that because for the last almost 18 months, when I get up in the morning and I check all my political news, I ask myself, I wonder what Trump did last night. And almost always he had done something while I'd been asleep that, was breaking news. And there's going to be an emptiness there. I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to, do my mornings once the campaign is over. But I'll be happy to have Trump out of my life because I am getting really fed up of him at this point.
I think we all want him out of our lives, which is what scared me more. I went back to my hometown, which is a good hour's drive away from here. Now, of course, here being just outside of D.C., this is sort of the blue state center of the nation, whereas going back home, it gets redder very quickly. And seeing all the Trump signs kind of scared me more than anything else going back home.
We have the mantra, yard signs don't vote, people do. And
Yes.
that was the problem that Bernie supporters had in the primary, was that they looked around and saw a lot of visible evidence of his support and not so much of Clinton's. But hers was, running sort of under the radar in that, she wasn't putting on big rallies or putting out lots of yard signs, but she had a lot of people who were getting to the polls on her behalf, even if they weren't talking about it. I have a feeling that this is going to be very much the same with Trump and his get out the vote. The loudest people are going to get to the polls, but all the quiet people are going to go in there and vote for Clinton or Johnson or someone else, Stein.
Mm-hmm. And what's the name in Utah, McKelvey or something like that?
Some guy on Morning Joe said he couldn't remember his name until he remembered Egg McMuffin. The guy's name is Evan McMullen. But now whenever I hear Evan McMullen, I think Egg McMuffin. So there you go. Yeah, he's very likely to win in Utah, which is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But Clinton has moved she moved 6 paid staffers into Utah last week.
All right.
So
and of course,
she's making
does Trump have a staff other than his family?
I don't. There was a place where he had 0 staffers. I can't remember if it was Utah. That's very, very possible. There's quite a lot of places where he doesn't have a campaign presence. And the other important thing that he isn't bringing to the table is all of the money to do the field work, to do the phone banks and to get the people out there. So yeah, it's going to be very exciting on election night to see if people can self-motivate themselves to the polls on election day for him, or if we're really just going to see a blowout, because if you don't put the resources into the field organization, you really can't win on the national level.
Yes. Although that kind of scares me that the population can be swayed by whoever has the better political machine. I mean, are they really thinking about the decision, or is it just because the political machine has brought them in and said, you should vote for this person or that person?
Well, I think the way that they would look at it, and I would look at it as somebody who's knocking on doors, is you're trying to identify as many of your supporters or people leaning your way as possible. And once you've identified them, you just make every effort to get them out. So if you, it's not so much about, there is some door to door, you can talk and try to sway people, but a single conversation with a canvasser at a door isn't going to be enough to sway it. It has to be, the whole campaign message and messages and the person's own decision and inclinations. But there are some people who just they'll forget. It seems impossible for me to forget what day election day is, but some people forget, or something comes up or they need help. Or, they just kind of get a couple phone calls from people, or they get an offer to the poll, and otherwise they might not have gone, but because someone else was going in that direction anyway, they could hitch a ride. And those individuals just add up across counties and then across states and across the country.
Understood.
Yeah. So, okay, and thus endeth the lesson. It's really getting exciting for me, like the Super Bowl of politics,
Thankfully, it only happens every 4 years.
Right, like the World Cup. Okay, so let's get going on the stories, and I'll go ahead and do screen share. They've changed the interface, so you'll have to tell me, can you see my screen?
And yes, it just popped up.
Great. So our first story comes from Vice. I'll go ahead and read out about 5 or 6 paragraphs because there's some background to the story, and then Matthew and I are going to have a chat about it. An atheist is taking on Alcoholics Anonymous in bid to get God out of 12 steps. A Toronto man has taken Alcoholics Anonymous World Service Inc. and the Greater Toronto Intergroup to the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario, alleging discrimination against atheists, agnostics, and freethinkers. The GTA Intergroup, which acts as a central organizing hub and directory for AA groups in Toronto, has essentially kicked out all atheist groups who have changed the traditional AA language by taking out the word God from the 12 steps. There are currently 501 AA meetings held in 252 locations across the GTA. However, atheists looking for AA meetings without a god attached will not find one in any of them because the GTA intergroup eliminated local atheist and agnostic meetings from their promotions and directories. Now, secular options in AA are officially considered non-existent in Toronto. Accordingly, questions remain as to whether the current AA program is modern enough for a pluralistic society. The first atheist and agnostic AA groups in Canada, Beyond Belief and We Agnostics, both of which are located in Toronto, were also the first agnostic and atheist groups to be booted out of AA intergroup. Since then, similar patterns have developed in Vancouver and Kingston. Last year, Lawrence Knight, 58, known simply as Larry in the rooms, took AA to the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal to take a stand against how non-believers have traditionally been treated in AA. Knight found sobriety through AA after his drinking became too much for him to control in the early 1990s, but he believes, like many others, that the words God and higher power, which are rampant throughout AA literature, are outdated. More specifically, he's arguing that alcoholics who have been abused by religious fundamentalists in their childhood, himself included, can have negative associations with the word God, some even finding the religion and the ensuing dogma which follows highly triggering. AA literature reflects the Protestant culture of the 1930s, but without any alternatives to traditional AA recovery, atheists and agnostics, alcoholics, are forced to find ways to make the literature work for them, such as considering a higher power to be the AA program rather than a god, or using the word God as an acronym for good orderly direction. So we'll stop there. The article continues on, and I'd strongly encourage anybody watching to go and read the whole article. But this was what was voted on by our patrons, the viewers, I should say, not the patrons in this case, to talk about. Now we've talked about this occasionally in the past, but this case it seems to be definitely one where the Canadian courts will have to step in, and I don't know Canadian law in terms of secularity very well, but here in the States, it does, people have been ordered by courts into recovery programs when the only ones that were available were AA. So it is an ongoing problem for a growing number of free thinkers and secularists in the US as well as in Canada. Matthew, I've been talking for a long time now, so
I know.
your turn.
I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to understand, was the organization delisted simply because they were secular, they didn't have a mention of God? Is that
Yes.
what was going on here?
Yep.
So now again, I don't know Canadian law, but here in the United States, well, you would like, according to the letter of the law here in the United States, that would be inappropriate because you can't have an open organization like that promotes one religion over another. Or let me rephrase that: an open organization that gets people through court orders have a religious belief such as that. So I don't know if that's even allowed in Canadian law. It would be very interesting to follow this case and see where they go with it, because how can they comfortably do that? But then again, I look in the United States where we have Kim Davis putting her own faith above the letter of the law of her job. So yeah, I think we need to follow this case and see where it goes, because this is something that needs to change.
Definitely. There's, the assumption that everybody is a Christian, because you live in a majority Christian country. There's a sort of natural assumption that, people are going to be of some sort of Christian faith, or, if you live in a multicultural society, place like New York, where I grew up in rural Wisconsin, everybody, I didn't even know there were things other than Catholics till I was almost like 10. So, my bubble was very, very well sealed. And also, this program being developed in the 1930s, and the idea of being dependent on God and giving yourself over, it is not just, when you put that into a religious context, yeah, for somebody who has a naturalistic worldview, who is an atheist or an agnostic, that you're asking them to do something about how they believe about the world, even though you can get away, you don't have to do that in order to get better. So their adherence to this concept of God seems less about treatment and more about promoting a worldview.
Or promoting a religious view,
Yeah.
as opposed to just we're here to help. At some point, we do everything, but then again, this is because I now have a secular view that I know that everything I do is something I've done of my own accord. That there isn't these forces outside of me, whether it's God or Satan or angels, demons, whatever you have, that the decisions I make are the decisions that this piece of, hardware up here in my head has chosen to do.
And the way they get around it too, by saying, that God is an acronym, oh, we'll just change the meaning of it for you, but we won't really change the process at all. We won't change the way that we present it. So it's basically saying, why can't you accommodate yourself to our way of doing things while we promote God?
But when you say it like that, that's almost like when the argument against gay marriage was, well, you can get married, just do it our way. You can marry someone of the opposite sex. It's the
Yeah,
same,
precisely.
almost the same idea.
Yeah. Yes. Just accommodate yourself to us, and then everything will be fine. Why
Just
can't you
because we're the majority.
Yes. Yeah. Now I know. I mean, to be honest, I've never been to AA or experienced it firsthand, or actually known anyone who's gone through it. So my information is totally off of stuff I've seen on TV, and I know that they talk about, your higher power can be a tree, can be whatever you want, but there is that notion, a religious notion in some ways, of surrendering yourself over. That, if people, I don't know how the agnostics and the atheists deal with it in their group, but if they have an alternative to the premise of a higher power or God, why can't that be offered as an alternative? I mean, I understand, or at least people to let people know that those options are available. If the end goal is to get people better, then isn't it more important that people feel comfortable being in the program and taking part than feeling alienated and maybe walking away from a program that could help them? It just seems a bit cutting off your nose to spite your face to me.
Yes, agreed. Um, yeah, I would just love to know the reasoning behind their delisting. So this is something to follow.
Yep. So yeah, everyone else, please read the rest of the article on Vice. One, I don't want to just sit here and read everything out because it would be exhausting for me. But also, I'm not sure how much we can do this for, comment and education and other things, but I don't know if I can just read everything out for copyright purposes.
And fair use
moving
has its
on.
limits.
Yes, I'm doing, conservative amount of fair use. So moving on to the next article. Oh, yes, this was voted on by viewers as well. This is the story about Hemet Meta, and it comes from Religious News Service, so it's coming from a religious perspective, and that's also part of the reason why I selected it, because they kind of put their spin on things that I found entertaining. Right, so Clinton or Trump? The choice is unclear for some atheists. Hemet Meta doesn't want a president who thinks evolution is a hoax. Quote, I don't want a president who couldn't even explain evolution. I don't want a president who can't tell fact from fiction and seems to believe anything that someone tells him on Twitter, unquote, Meta said in a recent YouTube video that has garnered a lot of attention in atheist corners. Quote, if I wanted to hear people whose best evidence for their belief is, well, some people have said it, then I'd go to church, unquote. So Meta, best known as the Friendly Atheist on his popular blog, will vote for Hillary Clinton. And he spends more than 7 minutes trying to persuade other atheists to do the same because he believes she, a lifelong Methodist, is the only candidate who shares their core values of separation of church and state, LGBT equality, and science-based education. Meta's video, which has attracted more than 22,000 views and almost 13,000 comments since it was posted on October 18th, is the latest salvo in the battle for the so-called atheist vote, as prominent atheists such as best-selling author Sam Harris and scholar Robert M. Price and more take to the internet and social media to persuade their fellow non-believers to vote with them. And it highlights the predicament of many atheists will find themselves in on November 8th. Should they vote for Donald Trump, the candidate who seems to have only a passing relationship with religion, despite his selection of evangelical Mike Pence as his second, or should they vote for Clinton, who says she reads the Bible and prays daily, and who chose Tim Kaine, a Jesuit-educated Catholic, as her running mate? For some, the choice is not clear. Clinton-Kaine may be the more personally religious ticket, but Trump-Pence is more cozy with the religious right, aka the evil empire among atheists. Then there's the Green Party candidate Jill Stein, who has no chance of victory, but is the only candidate who has reached out to non-believers and asked for their vote. So what's an atheist to do? Historically, they have voted Democratic and liberal. A new poll by the Public Religion Research Institute and RNS found the religiously unaffiliated prefer Clinton to Trump by a 2-to-1 ratio, but they tend to be independents. And while most voted for Barack Obama and Al Gore, politically conservative atheists tend to vote Republican and have made themselves heard in the general din of this election. Leaders of atheist and secular organizations with political agendas know they ignore them at their peril. Let's see. There's one other bit here that I wanted to read out. Here we go. This is from Jillian Becker, one of the atheists who is a supporter of Trump. She and her colleagues at the Atheist Conservative blog highlight reasons atheists should vote for Trump: immigration reform, tax reform, and his disbelief in climate change are among them. His religion, or lack thereof, plays no part. Quote, Trump's success, which we ardently hope for, has nothing to do with it being good for atheists, Becker said in an email. Atheists have no common interest. There is no such thing, in fact, as atheist interests, except in those countries, mostly Islamic, where atheism is punishable by imprisonment, torture, and death. Atheist Conservative has more than 10,000 followers, but Becker believes that is growing. We believe there are millions more out there who are both atheist and conservative, she said. So I would guess that many voters who are secular-minded, rational, and against the horror of the Clinton mafia coming to power will be voting for Donald Trump. I'll leave that there. That also goes on for a few more paragraphs, but I wanted to highlight the person who was saying that there are no atheist interests except for our opposition to things in Muslim countries, while at the same time organizing a bunch of atheists around her political beliefs. So, yeah. Thoughts and reactions to that?
This article started out so well and then just went off a cliff. I don't know where it went off the cliff, but it went off the cliff. Yes, I would like a president that would at least take to heart what the scientific community has been studying and has been determining over the last several centuries. Right now, my president's religious affiliation doesn't matter to me as long as he isn't making as long as he or she isn't making political decisions based on those religious beliefs. I don't think we have a problem with Clinton doing that. I don't think we have a problem with Kaine doing that. I don't mind the fact that Kaine's Catholic, because even Catholics believe in evolution. It's just this weird American fundamentalism where people suddenly believe that the Bible has more right about it than what scientists have been discovering over the last years, decades, and centuries. So that's the part that scares me, is where you take a ancient book and say, this has more power than all the discoveries we have, all the literature we've created on our scientific discoveries. Because we keep advancing, and the biological underpinnings of evolution are an important part of that advancement. And I've said this before, I don't understand how a neuroscientist as famous as and the name just escaped me, the former presidential candidate,
Rand Paul? No. Who's a neuroscientist? Oh, Ben Carson.
Ben Carson. Thank you. Neurosurgeon. Talking about how he doesn't believe in evolution, whereas you had to take biology at some point. You had to learn the biological underpinnings of neurosurgery. How could you not accept this? Where is the disconnect here? So that's what scares me, is where they take their religious beliefs so seriously that it affects every decision they make in their life. So it's not Trump I'm worried about in that respect. It's Pence I'm worried about in that respect, because he has made so many decisions in his previous political life based on his religious beliefs.
Yes, and we don't really expect Trump to actually govern on a day-to-day basis.
No,
it's going to be Cheney and Bush all over again.
Trump is completely unqualified for the job. He's not going to get anything done. It's Pence I'm worried about.
Right.
So that's not the issues. But has Clinton ever made a political decision, at least in the last 20 years, based on her religious ideas?
Some would probably say her opposition to marriage equality, and then she came around on it. Like a lot of
She
people,
came
so
around.
did Obama. So did a lot of people. I came around on it when I was, it's not that I was opposed to it. I just didn't think it was a possibility until people started asking for civil unions.
It wasn't a big enough deal for you to have had a decision on it. But once you were given the information, or in the case of a lot of people, once you know someone who is directly affected by the situation, you realize those are people too. That's when you come around to it. Changing your mind is quite all right. That's one thing that gets me about these political arguments, is like, you once had this belief 20 years ago, you did this. It's like, I changed, I learned, I've improved. Why is that such an evil thing to grow as a person and as a worker? You're a worker for the people as a politician. Why is that such a bad thing?
There's also the point that Americans themselves have come around on this issue. If you look at the attitudes on marriage equality, when they started polling on it as a political issue, you're gonna basically see within 20 years an inversion. Whereas in the 1990s, it was like 65% opposed, 35% in favor, to now being 65% in favor and 35% opposed. That kind of attitudinal shift that quickly, women didn't get the right to vote that quickly. Attitudes about women's ability to just go and put a piece of paper in a ballot that has a mark on it took longer, way longer to change. And that kind of, that was rapid cultural change. And when they also criticized her in her emails for saying, she's got a public face or a public position, a private position, I suspect that Barack Obama was in favor of marriage equality long before he came out in favor of marriage equality. I think he just wasn't, the population wasn't at a point where having that people would be in line with his views, and that's why, as popular opinion moved, a lot of politicians moved too. One could say to follow popular opinion. It could also be that they were finally able to express the views that they felt. And I think if those of you who sat around the Thanksgiving table or some other tables with family members and kind of bit your tongue, or didn't start an argument over an issue, can kind of relate to that. And then when people started changing their minds, you felt more free about expressing the fact that you've always sort of thought that. So, politicians are humans too, and there is an issue of representing views. So what the gay community did, what the LGBT community did, was to do what atheists, the whole point of normalizing atheism, come out as an atheist, come out as a gay person, because, as you say, when you know that person, then suddenly making jokes or dropping stereotypes, it changes. My mom will tell me that she tells her friends that I'm an atheist. I think she thinks it's kind of, exotic a little way, but, edgy or whatever. But then because someone who knows someone, or that person, it becomes, like you said, a person, not an idea.
Yes. So.
Sorry, did I talk us to the end of that one, or did you have anything else that you wanted to jump in?
That covers the first part of this article, the good part of this article, where we're saying all the good things about Clinton, and the bad things about Pence, because Clinton has this public-private side. Oh, that's where I was going with this. The whole public-private thing, and people are complaining that she needs to be real on both sides. It's like, sometimes there are situations where, for the path of least resistance, you make the separation between your public and private self just to get through the situation. Is it right? Probably not, but it's something you just have to do. I know it's the kind of decision I make every day. I know I email Kristi with some of the conversations I overhear at work, where I don't take part of the conversation because I don't want to have the argument. I want to just get my work done. But I could have the argument trying to say that, hey, no, you're wrong because of this, this, and this. It's just not a conversation I want to have. And with the LGBT rights, it's still a conversation we do need to have. And, you know, as a younger person, I was a bad person for not speaking out about those things. But again, it's now more normalized. It's now easier to have that conversation. Granted, to get here, I know a lot of people went through a lot of pain, and I wasn't of any help to those people during that time. So this is why there's the public-private side, and why people need to have the ability to switch between those two options. I know there are good people out there that are genuine 100% of the time. Those are amazing people. They have amazing lives, but I know they have struggles because they are so genuine at all the times.
Right. I mean, someone could turn to me and say, yeah, you're an atheist now, but you used to be a Catholic. And I go, well, yeah, I changed my mind. I mean, and I think in many ways, the atheist community is incredibly accepting and forgiving, not forgiving, but like incredibly accepting. If someone is struggling to leave religion or thinking about leaving religion, or used to make videos that were religious and then really questioned their religious beliefs and came out the other side, don't tend as a community to hold that stuff against them. You know, I think Jacqueline Glenn started out making religious videos and then eventually became an atheist. People don't talk about her old stuff. You know, people don't. So if we're willing to do that on that issue, you know, why can't we extend a little charity? I think on the issue of changing your mind on same-sex marriage. That was kind of more of an issue in the primary than it has been in the general, but it was certainly something that I heard many people talk about during the primary. So, but
Changing
yeah,
your mind. Changing one's mind is a good thing. We need to accept that, not tell people they're flip-floppers, not tell people that they what's the word I'm looking for, that they're indecisive or something like that. As long as you make a decision based on good evidence, it's a good thing to change and grow. But the part of this article that went off the rails was talking about how atheists are this group. Now, as you mentioned, atheists are a group because of the solidarity that they have among themselves, because they know the experiences they've gone through. But it's the writer of this article almost strawmans every side of possible based on what's going on, you know, talking about why people vote for who, and, you know, 2-to-1 for Democrats versus Republicans, and how they're independent. But oh, wow, this goes really, really wacky.
It's definitely perspective journalism. It's coming from a religious perspective, looking at the atheist, and you know, the audience too is obviously a religious audience. Hence, you know, like, oh, the, you know, evangelicals, the evil empire. Kind of references.
Oh yeah, that's way over the top. That's a little melodramatic. But yeah, it's the usual straw man argument against atheists. You know, about this group that wants to take down religious empires. But I mean, it's sort of true. You know, it's not that we want to take down religious empires. We just want religious empires to stop messing with our lives.
Right. And that's why I reject with the comments by Jillian, I forget her last name now, but her saying that, you know, atheists, there aren't really atheist interests. Well, that's just prima facie wrong. We have a lot of cases because of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the American Humanist Association in the courts, where people have been trying to put Jesus up on public property, you know, like, welcome to so-and-so, some town, you know, Jesus loves you, or Jesus saves. We've got situations where, you know, students are having religion brought up in the classrooms. There's a lot of little you know, these little infractions going on under the surface that people in smaller towns, you know, it takes them a lot of courage to get in contact with the Freedom for Religion Foundation, because we know what it's like. Well, I know as a feminist what it's like when people turn on you and suddenly there's a lot of, you know, in this case, social media hate directed, you know, at my comment section. Those people are living it. Those are their communities, their friends, and they might be ostracized or shunned or harassed because of their views. So to say that there aren't atheist interests in the United States, I think just really shows a lack of awareness of the day-to-day fights that are going on to separate church and state the way that it really should be, which is fair for all. We're trying to get everything fair for everyone, atheists included. So you know, the rejection of the community idea, again, just seems so self-defeating.
I think there was a quote in the previous article we just did talking about applying don't ask, don't tell to being an atheist. Whereas just to get along in the community, you have to hide that fact. Now, granted, that's generally an easy thing to hide compared to some other items that people have to do. Don't ask, don't tell. But still, it's hiding a piece of yourself when there's this topic that's verboten you can't talk about.
Right. Well, when I was growing up in Plover, Wisconsin, back in the middle to late 70s, I clearly remember us doing a Christmas pageant, and it must have been probably second or third grade. But part of the Christmas pageant involved us like all getting dressed up and reciting from Luke the passage about like, and the shepherds were in the field and yada yada yada. We did that like a Greek chorus, you know, we all recited it in unison. Like that was freaking illegal. we were doing it on school time. We were rehearsing it during school hours, and we put it on during, you know, for the school play. But probably if someone had filed a complaint in the 1970s in my school district about that play and made us stop, you know, I would probably have sided with everybody else as a 7-year-old or however old I was at the time. So educating people as to why separation of church and state is important is also a goal and I think an interest of the atheist community, because right now when we want to take religion out of the schools, Christians feel like we want to take Christianity out of the schools, and we just want to take religion. It doesn't matter. It's just Christians tend to violate this stuff more often. But if this was any other religion, we'd be just as opposed because it's unfair. That's the principle. Whereas they're looking at it as their religious expression, we're looking at it from a position of equality. At least that's how I see it.
I remember being that young child because I lived in a very conservative town, grew up in a very conservative town, grew up in a very conservative, very fundamentalist religion. There was the town atheist who was fighting against things like that, where the school would promote things for Christmas and Easter and things like that. That, you know, now looking back on it, I realized what he was trying to do. But as a kid who was a Christian who believed that following God was more important than following anything else, I remember that it's like, I remember the hatred. I remember being like, what are you trying to do? Just let us have our thing. Right. But really our thing, you know, was punching people in the face. It wasn't just, you know, the fist stops in front of your nose. It was punching people in the face.
But that's it. I mean, having grown up like that and you have that experience too, you know what it's like, the thinking on the other side. So you can, now that we're both atheists and we can empathize with the atheist, you know, the town atheist in your case, for me at least, that's where it points out that we're having two different discourses. And I understand their discourse. You know, I understand where the religious people are coming from, I think, generally, not specific people, but the general kind of tenor and tone of what happens. And I don't think that they understand our motivation or our reasoning. And that is definitely in the interest of the atheist community to promote our ideas and our explanations for why it's so important to separate church and state.
Understood.
We have a really unique, valuable thing in America. Like, I'm not even in America, but, you know, like I still feel American. In fact, you know, like when it came up, the opportunity to, well, and after I've been here for 6 or 7 years, I'll be eligible to apply for German citizenship. And had I been able to be a dual citizenship, it would be great to have European citizenship and American citizenship. But here, I'm pretty sure that they make you choose. I've got to be one or the other. And I just cannot, my identity is so powerfully American that I couldn't even fathom not having an American passport and not being an American. But yeah, that's an explicit law for the separation of church and state and to ensure a secular government. On the basis that a government that is not aligned to any God will therefore be should treat all of its citizens equally, regardless of their belief or non-belief about God or gods. I don't know that that really exists in other democracies. Even, you know, European democracies are still very much bound up with their religious traditions because of how power, you know, was organized in Europe. So, you know, I think this is one of the greatest things about America. And so defending the separation of church and state, I see as at the forefront of what the atheist movement is really should be about. Less time fighting each other on the internet and more time promoting education and information, and also understanding of trying to explain to people why separation of church and state is so important. So, oh hey, while I was looking down while I was just nattering on, and we were joined by somebody.
Yeah.
So
hey.
who's that?
It's Nick. I think I'm in Xavier on this account. Yeah.
All right.
It's not my real name account. Probably because I answered the email with this account rather my real name. Oh well. So how you
Okay.
doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, Nick. And yourself?
Pretty good.
It's good
Sorry,
to have
I
another
came in the
comment.
middle of your speech and I didn't want to interrupt. So
That was very polite of you, thanks. But now you're involved, and yeah, we're just wrapping up the second article on facepalm moments, and I was going to ask Matthew if he had anything else that he wanted to add on that one.
No, I think we can move on.
All right. So yeah, if you are ready to go, we can go to the third article. So, all right, everyone, no objections? Hearing no
no, I think I'm
objections,
good.
the motion is carried, and we are on to our next article. This one comes from the UK. I do make an effort to try to be not exclusively American in all of my articles. I try to be a little bit more international than that. And this is an interesting article, I thought, because of the different basis for the laws and the rules in the UK in terms of equality. So this comes from the Telegraph, and the title reads, "Gay Cake Case. Christians cannot claim special exemptions from law, insists equality chief." Christians who want to apply their religious beliefs in the commercial world must be prepared to make sacrifices, the head of the state-funded body, which took a bakery to court for refusing to make a cake with a pro-gay marriage slogan, has insisted. Dr. Michael Wardlow, Chief Commissioner of the Equalities Commission for Northern Ireland, said Christians must recognize they are not the only people who hold strong values and cannot expect special exemptions from discrimination law. The commission supported a claim against Asher's Baking Company, based in Newtonabbey near Belfast, after it canceled an order for a cake featuring the Sesame Street characters Ernie and Bert with the slogan "Support Gay Marriage." The bakery's evangelical Christian owner, the MacArthur family, said that they could not in conscience make the cake because they believe same-sex marriage is against the teaching of the Bible. In a decision upheld by the Court of Appeals earlier this week, a judge found that the refusal amounted to discrimination under laws on providing goods and services. So I'm just going to scroll down here because, crucially, the courts found that the Ashers could potentially have refused the order had it limited its offers only selling cakes for birthdays or other specific events, for example. The company's published terms and conditions already ruled out printing rude words or sexual images, but it had no restrictions on political slogans. So apparently here, that is part of the reason why they weren't allowed to get sort of out of making it, is because they had already said what their terms and conditions were for providing their services, and then they wanted to sort of retroactively change it because of their objection to same-sex marriage. So yeah, thoughts on that?
This gets
Nick, would you
back
like
to
to go
the.
first? Oh, sorry, Matthew. No, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say this gets back to the idea of making decisions for other people based on your own religious beliefs, and this is what happens when that occurs. People are sometimes shitty to each other when they make their decisions based on their religious belief.
Yeah, Nick, any thoughts from you? Are you still there? I can't hear you if you are, so dead air. Oh, he's away for a second. All right. It's interesting to me to see, the basis of just discrimination laws, the sort of straight out discrimination laws, and without the appeal to the First Amendment in a European country, again, kind of comparing it as an American, there isn't a sort of First Amendment right to religious practices here. So the framework under which this was analyzed was more of, the business law, but also the principle of discrimination too. It was, I guess you had the company said we're not going to do any political slogan. So one of the things in the article that I didn't talk about was that I think the people who had asked for the cake to be made said that they were suing because the baker couldn't possibly know whether or not they were gay because it wasn't a marriage cake. It was just a cake in support of gay marriage. It wasn't a wedding cake. And the court said, well, that kind of didn't matter if the baker thought you were gay or not. If your request met the terms and service, they can't just turn around and say, oh, we oppose that religiously, so we're going to refuse you, the ability to come here and use our services. So, but as you said, the whole idea of, well, those are my religious beliefs, so I get to put them on you. I get to pick and choose what I do and who I serve, and that kind of goes against having a public business.
Okay, you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, you're coming through loud.
Yeah, that goes against a public business, but I'm kind of torn because I think you should be able to choose who you serve, but that would get into some really bad things, like if you just so happen to have a racist store owner in, say, a very rural area, and the one black family gets treated unfairly, that would be kind of bad. Also, retroactively changing terms of service is kind of that's definitely something you shouldn't be able to do. So,
at least in the United States, though, the way that the law unfolded was, and I believe I'm correct on this. So we had the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and there was the issue of people who basically had segregated businesses back in the day. And they passed, there was one of the amendments, like the 13th or 14th Amendment or whatever, was the basis of kind of like moving things forward. But what ended up being key in terms of the provision of service was the basic principle is when you open a business, you're opening a business in the public sphere. If you go and you rent a shop on a high street or a main street and you open your doors, the town is giving you the license to operate in that business, in that building, because you're going to offer a service to the public. So in order to prevent private businesses from being able to discriminate, what Congress did was a very clever thing. They basically said that we want to pass a federal law that says any products that are moved on our federal highways, if you use any product that has been transported on a federal highway, you can't discriminate in the public sphere. And that was the Interstate Commerce Clause that they used as a basis for making it nationwide. So it didn't matter where you were. So Congress basically said, if you want to open up a business for the public, then you have to serve the public.
Yeah.
Now, there are issues. There was a case in the UK about people had a B&B. So they had their home and they turned their home into a bed and breakfast. And they said, oh, because it's our home, we want to be able to refuse same-sex couples. I'm pretty sure they lost that case because the principle again was, well, yeah, it's your home, but you're offering a public service. It's sort of like, this is not like an agreement between friends. You're advertising in public and offering your services. So that was at least the legal basis and the congressional wiles that made it so that you can't segregate if you are operating in a public marketplace.
Okay, well, that explains a lot, so that's a good thing.
It helps to be old sometimes.
Yeah.
You get more chance to absorb things.
I don't know too much about discrimination laws and stuff like that, other than I did read the Equal Pay Act, so other than that, I'm pretty much lost.
And that's okay, because there's a lot of it out there. I mean, it's very complicated and goes, yes. But I was a history minor at university.
Oh, okay.
So I really love me some history. U.S. history, European history, ancient history, didn't matter. I took them all. So, Matthew, any thoughts? I see you got yourself muted, but...
Nothing further than that. It's just, I'm amazed at how people feel how they're doing wrong just by offering a service to someone, and when the service is just a little icky for them. Why is this such an important deal for you? Why can't you just do it and be done with it? You've made yourself famous by trying not to do something that you don't like.
Right, and this isn't like in ancient Rome where Christians were being asked to go in public and make offerings to the Roman god or the emperor god in order for Rome to be successful, and if they didn't, they were guilty of treason. This is a freaking Ernie and Bert cake.
Yeah, I don't understand the basis of just not doing something because of, say, a political agenda or something. Because if I don't know, if I made a cake shop and they asked me to put, like, I don't know what something would be that I would be against. Actually, I probably would be extremely uncomfortable if it was like something horribly racist, but I think I would still. Actually, I'd probably have a no racist stuff clause in my terms of service, so that
There
might
you
be
go.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They
But
won't make penis cakes. That's reasonable. Yeah, that's fine.
yeah,
They said that. You walk in, you go, you make penis cakes. You're like, nope, right here. Can't make them. Sorry.
yeah, I'll explicitly put don't make penis cakes in there.
You have to go through a whole list of every single possible cake combination.
Yeah.
Go through the list.
Nope, we have one for the penis cake. That's right there. And
Yeah. Okay, so I think the last story that we've got is the Daily Caller story. Oh, let me change the screens first. And this one is about the Fancypants professor.
For some reason, I can't see your screen. Oh, there we go. Now it's working.
Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit lagged, I think, on your side. This is another piece that's going to have a lot of spin on it because the last one was from the Religious News Service. This one's from the Daily Caller. And it's not that long, but I think there are ideas in here that I wanted to kind of pull out and unpack. A Northwestern University professor is warning that Christian fundamentalists pose more danger to the internal security of the United States than Islamic terrorists pose. The professor is Catherine Wallace, a lecturer of medical education at Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine. Wallace, herself a Christian, explained her beliefs about Christian fundamentalism earlier this month during a lecture entitled Confronting Fundamentalism at the Seminary Co-op bookstore on the campus of the University of Chicago. If radical Islamic groups wanted to attack an American city, they had to hijack an airliner, Wallace explained. If they want to blow up a concert, they need to put on bombs on their own children and send young men in to kill themselves. However, the professor argued, Christian fundamentalists right here in the United States are much, much greater threat because they could somehow gain control of the nuclear codes. I think she's talking about Mike Pence there. And then she goes on to kind of question that people read the Bible literally or not. But she sounds like a really liberal Christian type, and she says that Christianity has been hijacked and weaponized by an alliance between religious fundamentalists and political reactionaries in recent decades. And she's got a book out called Confronting Religious Denial of Gay Marriage. So that's why the Daily Caller, for many reasons, does not like Professor Catherine Wallace. Now, on the issue, this seems like a little bit cut up, but in terms of the idea that Christian fundamentalists pose more of a danger to the internal security of the United States than Islamic terrorists pose, I would just point to a recent case where 3 white guys were going to put a bomb outside of a mosque, and they were arrested, and it was like, I saw it on news headlines, but it wasn't national news in terms of if it had been 3 Muslim guys who had been planning on putting a bomb outside of a church, the campaign would have stopped. So I think that even though the Daily Caller wants to mock this idea, if you look at who is attacking abortion clinics, who is killing off abortion doctors, and the idea of radical Christian militants, those people have actually committed more crimes and killed more people than Islamic terrorists, since 9/11 or whatever else. So I know that they want to paint it as completely ridiculous that Christian fundamentalists aren't a threat, but certain segments of Christian fundamentalism does produce people with some pretty extreme ideas, like the Army of God, for instance.
Of course, being the atheist, I always look at the insidious threat of Christian fundamentalism, the one that causes us to force children to learn creationism, the one that holds us back scientifically. How many minds are we losing to not having given them a good education? That's, to me, is one of the biggest threats that they provide. But yes, you're correct that because it doesn't fit the anti-Muslim narrative, we don't hear about the stories of Christians doing horrible things.
Nick, any thoughts?
Yep. Well, I agree that, there's a very low report rate, at least nationally, about non-Muslim terrorism. But what I want to know is the factors that aren't religion that contribute to somebody who decides that they want to, even for reasons they say are religious, put a bomb under a, I don't know, like an abortion doctor's seat or something, or bomb an abortion clinic, because there are plenty of Christians that are very, like, I don't know, devout's not really the right word for this, but evangelical to the point of, that's not even right. I'm trying to think of a word.
Extreme?
What?
Extreme?
Yeah, extreme, but sorry, I always want to be like very, very precise with my language, and I don't think there's a word for what I'm trying to say, because if you actually followed the Bible word for word, you'd hit a contradiction, and then you'd be like, oh God, what do I do? Because I don't know how to do a contradiction. But like what I want to do is be able to say, make a model of every single avenue that, or every single variable that can contribute to what turns a person into an extremist like this, and see if we can find out to what extent religion plays a role.
I think that's an excellent point. Really, because you're right. It's not just religion. Religion is sometimes the way that the worldview is framed that allows the extreme views to be for people to make sense of them, to justify them in their
Right.
own mind. But
It seems more of a justification than a cause, at least necessarily. I mean,
well, I think in terms of factors, there are certain, like a profiler would, if a bomb were to go off, I think there are probably, they have ways of profiling people. When it comes to Islamic radicalization, obviously younger men are more of a target. I think in the States it seems to be mature men. If you think about like the Bundy takeover of the federal building, or the three guys who were busted for trying to create this bomb, Timothy McVeigh. I don't know, did they ever convict anyone of the Olympic Park bombing? And the people who were taking out abortion doctors were primarily men, but they were older men. So it seems there's a lot of probably cultural context here as well. Maybe in the West it has more to do with marginalization, like have these guys been long-term out of work? Is there an issue of mental health issues in the past, or have they, do they have friends, a lot of extreme, are they part of radical groups? To what extent do those networks reinforce those ideas and make it more acceptable of thinking crossing the line? So I think there would probably need to be a cultural international comparison. But I think, it seems to me that what really could have transformed the way that we are living now is if after 9/11, the United States went into Afghanistan. I had no problems with us invading Afghanistan. Get rid of the Taliban, and then do a Marshall Plan for Afghanistan. What made Europe a success after World War II, what made Japan a success, was the fact that we put a lot of money into those countries, helping with rebuilding their infrastructures and their economies. And right now, still to this day, in Afghanistan, poppy opium production is a great cash crop. And if we had given people economic security and hope for the future, and if we'd spent, I would have rather spent $300 billion building up the Afghan economy to make sure that the Taliban could never take root again, because everybody in Afghanistan wanted to be middle class, and they wanted to send their kids to school, and there were colleges being built for them, and people could actually live their lives not under threat, and want that, and reject the Taliban that was associated with that. I think it would have completely changed the trajectory of our modern history.
oh yeah, but at the time, getting Congress to put $300 billion into another country would have taken a miracle. So
yeah, they were more interested in going into Iraq than fixing Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It was Rumsfeld and Cheney at the time.
Right.
Wow, how did we get on this?
Me wanting to look at every single aspect of
Oh yeah,
what makes a terrorist, which I don't know if it would even be possible to toss all the factors into a model and actually get a very good prediction, because it might not even be completely linear, and I don't think all the factors would be independent. So it would be
well,
it would be
okay,
a
so
mess very
As a statistician here, I would say what you'd be looking at is a logistic regression, because you'd be looking at the probability of someone becoming a terrorist or not. So that becomes
Right.
not a regression. It's not a linear regression. It's not
Oh.
OLS where it's additive. It's a probability based regression.
Right. I'm looking at I'm working on a PhD in statistics, so.
Okay. Sorry. Right. So as my way of doing that would be, I would gather all of the observations of terrorists in the bios, and as much as I could gather about them in terms of their variables, and then quantify that numerically, and then look at how each factor explained the odds ratio when controlling for all the other variables.
Right.
So
Yeah. Well,
that's
what
how
I'm
I do it.
saying is in a logistic regression, it's been a while since I did categorical, but
Yeah. Okay.
when you're doing a logistic regression, if you have an interaction effect, yeah,
Well,
you could do that.
yeah. I mean, you could run
Yeah.
multicollinearity on the variables before you ran the regression to see if you had anything above a 0.7 or anything, for just on a
Yeah.
spot, any
The
problems.
cutoff would weigh. It varies, but depending on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we generally use a 0.7 or higher because it's like, but I mean, just to eyeball it to see if there's any multicollinearity problems. And
Yeah.
then if there were, then you could either, use one rather than the other, or, maybe look at interaction effects, as you said, or put them together as a scale. So, I mean, there's a couple things that
Yeah.
you could do. And of course, that wouldn't necessarily, well, here's the question, which, when we talk about science, for the natural science, if you're able to explain a phenomenon, you then should be able to predict it, right? If I can explain the rate at which if I can calculate gravity, the rate of falling, and I can calculate that, then in theory, I should be able to just change the numbers and predict how something would fall in the future. But when you're looking at something like terrorism,
Well,
if I have an explanation and my model explains, let's say 75% of the variation in whether or not someone's going to actually plant a bomb, does that mean I can then predict what the next person's going to do if I know about those variables? And that's why social science is just harder.
that'd be really hard to do, because you would have. I mean, I work more with pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. So when we get into social science, I have very little experience with psychology, but I have some. And I think it would be extraordinarily difficult to try to make a prediction given how rare terrorist attacks actually are compared to like every other type of behavior. So
yeah, I mean, just because we can't explain it doesn't necessarily mean we can predict it.
yeah.
Yeah, so this lady's, Christian, so I guess, she would have gotten more of a tongue lashing from the author of this article for criticizing Christian fundamentalism. But yeah, the whole idea that some fancy pants professor is actually saying some valid things that we could actually check on empirically is somehow outrageous to the Daily Caller.
Yeah, and I probably would agree with her that, well, just because of the vast amount of, well, not vast, but like extremely small amount of terrorism that actually takes place. Fundamentalism, say invading the schools, or invading sounds a little too strong, but like getting influence in schools, teaching creationism, and say taking away people's rights and other things it'd be hard to quantify that versus how much taking a life is, but it could probably do more long-term damage at the very least.
Yeah, I'm not worried about, terrorists forcing kids to learn creationism in schools. And, yeah, you can say, obviously, when you have a terrorist attack, that's tragedy. People die. It's awful. We should try to prevent them and stop them. But, just because that's the worst thing that could happen doesn't mean that everything that Christian fundamentalists do, just because it's not that, isn't as bad. Or is bad, it isn't bad.
Well, right. I wasn't saying
benign.
that.
Yeah. No,
I'm just
I'm
saying,
good. Yeah. No, I wasn't saying that you were.
Yeah.
That there seems like a fake argument they're trying to put forward.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we've actually been going, I think, for almost an hour and a half now. I'm sorry you came in only at the end, but I'm glad you were able to join us. But before I guess we go, I'm going to let Matthew come off of mute here. See if there's anything else that you guys want to chat about before we wrap it up.
No, I think that's it for me today.
You've been on Hangouts for like 2.5 hours going now.
Yeah. People are going to see a lot of me for a while.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I hopped in because I was like, oh yeah, I am one of your patrons, and I do get to do these hangouts because I
You
checked my
are.
email and just saw it. And usually I don't check this email address anymore, the one that this account is under, because I do everything under my real name now. But
Well, I have on my Facebook page, you can message me because I have actually, like, I send it to the patron hangout, but I've also, like, on Facebook, I'm in contact with some of my patrons, and I
um,
also will send, like, the articles, if I'm organized, at least a half hour ahead of time so that people know
okay,
what they are before we go on air.
yeah, because I kind of
And
just jumped in here like I didn't even check the pool temperature or anything. It could have been
that
like
was
20
great.
degrees, and that would be horrible. But
It was lovely to have you. But yeah, if you just go to my Facebook page, that's linked in the description box, and you can message me there, and then I'll just have you on the list of people to send the links to.
okay, I can do that. I'm a member of Against the Odds too, so
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So we
got
were
that.
plugging that at the beginning of the show. Which
Oh,
group?
good.
Which collab are
Oh,
you working on?
veterans.
All right, because that one's just getting going.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tedious process because I'm only really very knowledgeable about the psychological impact of well, not psychological impact, but like the psychological problems that veterans are facing, and I don't know about other things like I know there's like a problem of homelessness with some of them and stuff like that, but I don't know like the precise like information that should be given.
Well, don't let the great be the enemy of the good. Just go to your strengths.
Yeah.
So
So
let
well, I'm
someone else
trying to
be the
find.
expert on something else, and then you'll learn from them. They'll learn from you, and
Well, it seems like we have. Well, Christiosity posted quite a few links that were very helpful, actually. So I can go into those. There's also a problem of the Koch brothers, basically. Like, there's a lot of people attempting to. It seems like they're trying to co-opt veterans' issues for some sort of agenda, like with the. I'd have to show the paper, but like the Koch brothers were funding a group that was. It's for veterans. But what the group's actually really doing is trying to privatize the VA. And it's
I'm so tired of them trying to take taxpayer money to line their own pockets.
yeah, I mean it's very frustrating when you see that. Not to get into the whole like privatization versus public argument on an economic basis. It's still extremely frustrating when I'm just like, dude, I just want the right numbers for now, and then I'll go into all this other stuff, and it's hard to find even the right numbers. So I've just been combing through peer-reviewed literature over and over and over again for the past like when I have time for the past couple of weeks, and I'm on vacation from one of my jobs until the end of the year, basically. So I have
So
more free
you've
time,
been,
but I
so you've
still
given
have
yourself another
teaching,
job.
and yeah,
Yeah.
I do consulting and stuff too, but I still have like teaching and my dissertation and everything to work on, and yeah, it gets very overwhelming very quickly.
Well, I'm a big fan of working smarter, not harder. So what I would probably do is like if offer to make the bit on mental health challenges for any collab video, and then just go with your expertise in the first one, so that you've
Yeah,
got
that's
lots
probably
of
what I'll
time.
end up having to
Yeah.
do because um, other than me, I don't think there's very many people working on veterans issues. I haven't been able to get a hold of many people. Uh, there's one other guy who's interested, but he's very, very busy. So,
All right.
so
Well, I
he's
know that maybe when
kind of in the same boat.
yeah, when the other groups, like I know the abuse video, we're reading out our bits, and they're due on the 5th of November or something for that video. But maybe what you guys could do is just put out a call to people in other groups saying, "Hey, we could use some help on this," because I know all of the other groups kind of got filled up, and veterans was one of the last ones to get a group going. But that
Right.
doesn't mean that we can't help you guys out with your stuff, either doing research or recording stuff once our first videos are done. So
Yeah. I don't really have a voice for radio either, so it would be nice having somebody to read off my script or something.
I think you sound fine.
Okay, well.
You know that everybody hates the sound of their own voice, right?
Yeah, I know that.
So join the club. Except maybe like Beyonce. I bet she doesn't hate the sound of her own voice. That's
or Trump, sadly.
No, Trump, yeah, but for completely different reasons. One's justified, one's unjustified.
Yeah.
All right, so we got another plug for the show for the new channel, I should say, Against the Odds. That's up now, and a group collaboration across boundaries to advance understanding and awareness and access to information about issues facing men. Cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. So from Nick and Matthew, if you guys, Matthew, first say goodbye to everybody for this month?
Good day, everyone. Thank you very much.
And Nick?
Goodbye. Hopefully my 20 minutes or so was entertaining.
Yes. You were really great to have on. I'm glad you were able to join us again. And also one last shout out to Tom, that we missed you, and we're looking forward to seeing you well and in hopefully the November Patron Hangout. All right, guys, I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. The two of you stick around. We can chat a little bit off air. And for the rest of you, I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.